Hi guys, it's Blackie. Okay, today I got a piece of kit I've been kind of itching to play with. Many of you know I've used a Trangia stove, and I love the Trangia military stove that I showed in a couple of my videos and the modification I made to turn the handle around the other way. If you don't remember that one, I will put the video at the end of this video so you can go back and look at it. But it's a simple modification to keep that handle from getting so hot. But I really like the Trangia as a carry it when it's, bad weather stove. And it's a great foul weather stove. That's one of the reasons they, in Sweden, they call it the storm stove. Okay, great stove. And they have Trangia sets that are like the Trangia 25 and 27. Those are just great little stoves. I mean, that is like the Coleman stove of that part of Europe. You know, we grew up here in America knowing about the Coleman stove. That was the camp stove, that was the fishing stove, that was the one you took for the big camp outs, that was either pump up gas or it had propane. But they used alcohol stoves over there, and I can see that the appeal of it. It's a light, handy, relatively light for backpacking stove. Now I have looked and lusted in my heart for many of those Trangia stove sets. I've got the little stove that I had both in the military set, and I had another one I just picked up the stove by itself, and I've got a couple of them. But I wanted one of those sets that go together, those round sets, and I just couldn't come up with the money. So I was bored one night looking on Amazon, and I stumbled upon a rip-off of them. Now it's a Chinese knockoff called Ledmark, something like that. And it was on sale for $15. Try the concept, right? So I decided to get one to try the concept. So this is that stove, and so I'm going to make I made a couple of modifications. One, don't bother looking for the black one. This is a Blackie stove. I took barbecue paint and painted mine so it's easier to clean up. The metal is kind of protected better, plus the fact that it seems to me to heat a little more evenly. And if you remember, I did this to my Pathfinder bush pot. I've done it before to bush pots before. But what this little stove does is it sets up and allows you to have a couple of different cook pots. You have the base that has vents on the outside. That's what you turn toward the wind, and not on the other side. And that allows the air to come in and kind of pressurize and then go straight up. So you would turn it toward the wind. Then you have the little burner. We'll get to that in a minute. Then you have a top windscreen that sits on it. Now, modification I made to mine. As it comes, these two just go together. The Trangia is pushed down and locked together. That's an advantage. But all it is thin metal. And so, one piece of metal here and one piece of metal there. Blackie just took a pair of pliers and very gently, very slowly went all the way around, leaning the end one to the outside and the outer ring slightly to the inside, so that now you put it up there and you push down and they lock together. Yes, I can pull it apart, but it's snug and it's more enough just to hold it, and so it isn't going to be tippy as much. They're kind of stuck together. Okay? Now down into that hole down there, this is where the actual stove sits. You can see the air holes all the way around it, and then this gives it like a volcano Venturi effect. The heat rising straight up is forced up and around the cook pots. Now the cook pot, there's two cook pots, three actually, if you can't fancy. You have a large cook pot, you have a smaller cook pot which nests inside of it, and that sits down in here like this. Now when it does, notice the heat has to come out these air holes. It has the full contact surface of the base of this pot. The fire comes here and it has to run the full surface and then come out. It's kind of sealed up here at the top where it sits down on that ring. So it has to hit, run up the side, and then come up. Very efficient for getting as much horsepower out of that flame as you can get. Just like that. So it just sits up there. And this would be really good for boiling stuff, because I wouldn't want to fry so much, because the Trangia gets so hot so quick, and this material, which is really thin aluminum. Think Boy Scout mess kits guys, it's going to heat up in an instant. But for boiling stuff, like soup, stews, and immersion heating, my favorite way to do it. We'll get to that in a little bit. Then you've got the fry pan, which I did bottom black on it. And it's got a lip, and it will act as a lid for both pots, either in the upright or the flipped over. I'll show you that where you can see it again. Either in the cover like that, or sitting like that. Now like this, it's a great way to use it as a warmer. So I've got something in this pot cooking, and I've cooked this ahead of time. I want to keep it warm. I can put it up here and then set it on top as a lid and let that steam and heat transfer to keep this food warm, excuse me, until that food's ready. I can even get crazy and turn this upside down on the top of it and trap that heat even better if it's a really cold day. I've been wondering, could I bake in this? But I haven't played with that yet. We shall see. But get the pots on and off. It comes with one of these little doodaggies. Now, when it comes out of the box, this stuff is a super cheap price point, guys. Let's just be totally brutally honest here. If you want high quality, get the Trangia. Absolutely. But I'm just playing with the design right now. Before I fork off $100 or $75 or $90 for basically the same thing, but it's made in Sweden for Trangia, before I dish out that kind of money, I want to see, do I like it first? And $15 is cheap enough to practice with. And if I really like the design, I'll pony up and go for the bigger and badder. If I don't like the design, I've saved myself like 60 or 70 bucks. That's, you know, I'm like you. I live on a budget. But this handle set is a gripper. And so what it does is you put it over the pot, and then there's a notch right there that locks onto the rim like that. And it's actually stable. Now mine was not exactly stable when I got it. And so you're going to have to look at it carefully if it is, and bend these legs a little closer or whatever. And that's super easy to do. This is soft metal. So all you got to do is just bend them in just a crunch. And I looked at them head on, and one of them was one way and one was the other. I just very gently straightened them out to where they will contact. And so what I want is that whenever I put it onto the pot and I come up here and lock it, it doesn't rattle. It's a good set. Both legs are at 100% contact, and the inner lip is at full 100% contact, and it isn't off to one side, it's vertical. Okay? So now it's a good handle. And it will lock on to the pots as well. And this is how you take it in and out of the fire. Pretty simple, pretty easy, fairly resourceful. Now, let's talk about this stove a minute. A question that I get asked a lot when I'm using my Trangia at events and things is, how long will it burn? How do you know how much fuel to put in it? How do you know whenever it's about to run out? Etc., etc. Well, let's talk about the burner a minute. Now, these burners were developed in, as far as I understand, the 1920s up in Sweden, and were used in military applications and etc. And they're very good little stoves. Most people sing the praises of these little Trangias. Now, this is not a Trangia. And how do you know it's not a Trangia? Well, one thing is look at the bottom. All the Trangias have an actual T stamped into it, but tick 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 Trangia. Hey, here's my old Trangia military stove that you saw in several of my videos, and it's got the wind cover, and I flat black painted it. I'll tell you straight up, I use a barbecue spray paint to paint my stoves because it seems to make them more durable to me. It's easier to clean them up off of that paint with the soot and etc. So that's the way I go. Windscreen. Now this is an actual military Trangia, and as you can see, it's a whole lot bigger than this Chinese ripoff, and this one burns a whole lot longer, but it does not have a T in the bottom of them. This was military issue in Sweden, so it ain't a guarantee. See that base? You see that base, you know it's probably going to be out of Chinese. Some of them have a T embossed, and they say that is the actual Trangia, maybe current production, but this is an old original, and it is not got a T in it. Now, the other difference you're going to notice is, this one is old and dirty, because it's been around a while, needs a good scrubbing. When you look inside of them, down there in the bottom, you can probably see it easier on this one, there's a very fine gap of where the inner doesn't meet up correctly. Same thing on the original. What that's for is how these stoves are created. This top part is a component, it's pressed. This bottom part is a component, it's pressed. Inside is a flat piece that's been rolled around and then seamed, and they put this half that's been made and that half that's been made with that sleeve in the middle, and then they roll this outer edge over. So this is a roll seam where it rolls over like that to grip the bottom, and that's how it's pressed together. This Chinese ripoff is made the same way, and it's got that same type of pressed lip and etc. When you look inside of it, you can see that material right there is the vertical wall. Now what's happening is fuel is put into the chamber, and then it will seep under the wall into the outer combustion chamber, and then it comes up to that little row of dots there. Those dots are jets that allow the gas to come out. So you put your alcohol in the middle, you set it on fire. This material is very thin, and why do you see these in a brass or a copper? It's because it heats up very fast, and therefore it transfers heat, and that's very important for a proper burn. This stove has to get hot to heat the fuel to make the gas that pressurizes and comes out of the jet, and therefore produce more fire. It's called blooming in the people that carry these, and it will go from a erratic flame to a blue jets coming out all the way around. The center will go out, and it's just a bloom, that's what they call it, a bloom of blue gas jets like you see on a gas jet stove at home. That's when the materials got hot enough, it's causing the fuel to gasify. Now the colder you get in environments, if you're down close to zero, this doesn't do it very fast. The best thing you can do then is heat up the fuel, heat up the stove ahead of time, put it next to your body or whatever, and get it as warm as you can. Fill it up, put it out there, light it, and let it go. But if you also notice on this lip, there's sort of a dish area around here. That's for pouring fuel on it in extremely cold conditions, setting the top of the fire so it heats this whole top faster than just dinner. It's called the priming ring, and that's true of the original as well. In fact, it's much bigger on this one. This was a military application in Sweden. So you see how big that dish is right there for holding fuel. So this would heat up this entire top and therefore cause gasification faster. So here's our question for today. How long does it burn? To be honest, I don't know. But I'll tell you what I've done with my old Trangia. You'll never see it on camera. The marks I got inside of it. But I need to do a little math. And that is, if this is full, how long will that burn? What is full? Okay. Full is I'm going to pour it out of some container that pours fairly fast, not a slow trickle, because remember it's going to go into that wall. Okay. If I pour a little and wait, and pour a little and wait, and pour a little and wait, it will wick out the outer, and the layer inside the fuel chamber will keep dropping as it flows to the outside, and there's fiberglass usually in there that wicks it up to the jets, so I can overfill it. If I wait till I keep adding, well, it won't add any more and it's crosshair, it will not burn efficiently because there's no air chamber. It needs an air chamber on the outer, inside this outer skin. Okay, you got an inner wall and the outer skin that the jets are on. This has got to have an air chamber, so you should not fill it up. Actually, you should not fill it any higher than this on the inside. So if I pour it and let it sit, and pour it and let it sit, and eventually it comes up to about that level, stop. Don't keep going because there's no air chamber. It'll have to burn out of just raw fuel at very low power until it burns all that fuel out and have that air chamber out here and get it going. Little tricks you learn that I've practiced with these stoves quite a bit. So I want to know how long this stove burns. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill it up. Something that pours fairly fast. I'm going to fill it up all the way to that ring right there on the inside of that lip. There's actually where that wall that's been rolled down. I want to fill it up to the top. There's a seam I think you can see on the back side. The top of that seam, but you see that lip there stops the seam. I'm going to fill it up to that seam one time. Stop. And let that fuel flow down. My experience has been that's pretty close to full. Okay? Once it's full, I'm going to set it inside of its windscreen and I'm going to ignite it and then I'm going to time it. So this stove, under these relative conditions of about 75 degrees, how long does this stove burn? Let's make up a number. Usually these stoves burn somewhere between 20 to 30 minutes, depending. Now the military stove can go up to 45 minutes. I've had it run just because it was not burning its proper, to be honest, but it burned 45 minutes one time. But usually it's around 20 to 30 minutes. So let's say this thing burns outstanding 30 minutes. Okay? That means that a full run is 30 minutes. So I will then go down that seam, and eyeballing it, I'll go halfway. And I'll take a 90-degree scribe and I'll go in there and I'll make a mark all the way across that line. That's the halfway point. And half of 30 is 15 minutes. What's half of that? Half of 15 is 7.5 minutes. So I'll go below it and only to one side. So all the way on both sides of that seam, I go all the way across. That's half. And the one below it, I only go one side only. So it's kind of like a half-inch mark, you know what I mean? It will be the 7.5 minutes, so we'll just call it 8 minutes right there. How long does something take to boil? At least 6, usually 10. So this, at load to half, should burn about 15 minutes. Well, how long is my normal burn in my normal meal? 8 to 10 minutes. So if I went halfway between, looking at what I'm cooking, I want it to boil for a couple of minutes. So I'm going to do a 15-minute boil, because it'll come to a good boil at about 8 minutes, and it'll boil for like 7-8 minutes, and then it'll sit there in the heat. And I'll run out of fuel. I ain't got to worry about fuel, right? I don't want to waste fuel, is the whole idea of this discussion. And so if I fill up too much fuel, then I got to extinguish it, let it cool down, and then put the lid back on it without melting my O-ring. And as you just noticed out of the old Trangia, my O-ring is kind of had it. But I put it in the lid and it'll stay in there. Just like that. But I don't carry fuel in my Trangia, this old Trangia anymore. My little pocket one I do, and I've got a good seal on it. So see, that goes in. So now my little seal right here, it needs a test so that I know that this one will burn how long at full, how long at half, how long at a quarter, how long at 3/4. And either I can remember it, or I'll scratch it on the bottom down here somewhere with a scribe so I can remember it. I have done it on the side of one before, you know. Full 30, half is this, quarter is this. So that if I don't come back to this stove in 6 months or whatever, or a year, because I'm using something else and I come back and I'm not trusting my memory, I can simply take it and look at it and go, okay, that's how long it is. How long is it going to take to cook this? X long. How much fuel do I need? X amount. That's the amount of fuel I put in it. Sit in there, ignite it, boom. That way I can just take the food off, come over here and start eating, and know that Trangia is going to run out of fuel in 2 minutes or something. That's not a lot of fuel to waste. I can extinguish it if I need to, but why bother? Learning how to dial in how much fuel I need is part of the fun. If I need a little, I underestimated I need a little extra. Then I need to wait for that thing to cool down so I can hold it in my hand, and add fuel to it. Don't try to pour fuel into it while it's in there and it's still hot. I've seen guys do that, think they're going to fry fish or something with one of these, and it doesn't have a long enough burn time. For that, definitely go with the Coleman stove or one of the other type stoves. But for quick heat and eats along the trail, these Trangias are really good. And we're going to see how this knockoff set does, just to test out the design. Okay guys, here we are. This little add-on, I've added water to it and kept it going. See, it's still got flames. They're just a grunt of fluid when I wiggle it. It's within like a minute or two of it, and it has been boiling. How long has this little stove run on one full filling? As of right now, 45 minutes on one complete filling. The fuel I used is that right there. Clean strip, fuel denatured alcohol, clean burning. Now this is the pot that I had on there to begin with. As you can see, I've used barbecue paint on it. But that's no soot, no nothing. Perfectly clean on that. I boiled on this one for about 25 minutes. Now I swapped the other one to get it a little bit of conditioning as well. But 45 minutes on one filling. That's pretty impressive. And it's kept a good solid rolling boil. Over half that pot is boiled out. So I'm waiting for the flames to quit. And I have unlocked my thing, yes, but the flames are still going. Me filling it up to the line I talked about. One time, just poured it in one time, set it there, let it settle down for about 2 minutes, and then I ignited it with a ferro rod. That's more than enough to cook 90% of your camp stuff. So now I'll incrementally mark that down to half, a quarter. And I think I'm going to do some experiments. Usually a quarter should be more than enough to cook anything I'm going to have, especially when I like doing immersion heating. Knowing I can fill that stove up and we get at least minimum 30 minutes of run time means that I can immersion heat. And for those that don't know that, I've talked about that in videos before. What I do is, you want, say, a can of chili. They want some leftovers. I want this, they want that. You put it into a quart freezer bag. Get a name brand, don't get the cheap ones. They're food safe with hot water because it's designed to go in the freezer. They're expecting you to dump stuff right out of a boiling hot pot directly into it and then put it in the freezer. So those things have to be set up to handle it. So you put it into a Ziploc boiling bag, set it in the water, surround it by water, and bring the water to boil. The water will not come to a boil until everything in that pot is 212 degrees. So I don't burn it. It's an immersion. It's a even heat, and that thin aluminum doesn't burn anything. Nothing gets stuck to the pot, etc. You set it in there, you heat it up, and then when it's time to eat, I pull the bag out and set it in some other container, open it up, and you eat it directly out of the bag with a plastic spoon. When you're done, throw away the plastic spoon in the bag. You're done. No dishes to wash. I like easy stuff. Thanks for watching, guys.